Vince McMahon, the man who turned a regional circus act into a global empire. For decades, he was untouchable. Every scandal, every lawsuit, every headline, he walked away without a scratch. But in 2024, everything changed. Vince sold WWE to TKO, became executive chairman, and for a moment it looked like he was back on top. And then, almost overnight, he was gone. Forced to resign, selling his stock, and shut out of the empire he single-handedly built. So here's the real question. Did Vince finally fall because of his own sins? Or did someone else make sure the king never got back up? Stick around, because the most sinister theory is waiting at the end. And subscribe to Wrestling for Breakfast, the only place where we tell you the stories no one else would. 2024, a lawsuit landed. Within 24 hours, Vince resigned from TKO. And here's where things get strange. Vince had survived worse, way worse. The steroid trial threatened prison. The scandals of the early 2000s damaged WWE's brand. Even the 2022 investigation forced him to step away. And yet, somehow, he always came back. So why did this one stick? The answer might not be in the lawsuit itself, but in who benefited from it. For the first time, Vince wasn't fighting one accuser. He was up against an entire corporate machine that suddenly had every reason to move him off the board. And that leads us to our first theory. But by the end, this one will feel almost polite compared to what's coming. The simplest theory is often the right one. TKO and Endeavor wanted a clean, sponsor-friendly WWE. They had billion-dollar media deals lined up. Vince? He was radioactive. This was a man who hated ads on his ring mat, who thought corporate branding cheapened his product. Endeavor, meanwhile, wants prime bottles in every camera shot, and crossover stars who can sell to Wall Street as easily as they sell to fans. So what's easier, convincing Vince to change or removing Vince completely? When the lawsuit hit, it gave TKO the perfect cover. Publicly, they looked like they were doing the right thing. Privately, they had finally cleaned house. And for the first time in his life, Vince couldn't fight back. Because the harder he fought, the more damage it would do to the company's image. The ultimate irony, Vince McMahon, the king of defiance, silenced by the same corporate structure he helped create. But if this was just corporate cleanup, the next theory cuts a lot closer to home. There's another layer to the Vince story, the family. When Vince first resigned in 2022, Stephanie McMahon stepped up as co-CEO. For years, she had played the loyal soldier. This was her moment. And then Vince came back. He threatened the board, forced his way into the TKO deal, and within days, Stephanie resigned. Just like that, years of loyalty thrown out the window. Triple H, meanwhile, had 5 months of glory as head of creative. The shows felt alive again, fans were excited. But the moment Vince came back, Hunter went from running the show to watching his scripts land in the trash. And here's something people forget. The first investigation into Vince wasn't launched by the government. It came from WWE's own board. They dug into hush money payouts, forced him out once, and then sat back as he clawed his way back into power. So what if, when Vince forced his way into the TKO deal, those same people took it higher? What if the board itself leaked everything to regulators and the feds, making sure Vince couldn't wriggle free again? The parallel is hard to miss. Vince built his empire like Caesar. And just like Caesar, his downfall may have come from the people closest to him. And if betrayal by family sounds brutal, wait until you hear the final theory. The most sinister one of all. What if Vince was never meant to survive the TKO merger? Think about it. This is something every fan knows. Vince McMahon would never sell. For decades, he swore he'd keep the business in the family. Shane thought it would be him. Stephanie thought it would be her. Triple H thought he was being groomed for it. And yet, he sold. Not to his kids, not to his son-in-law. He sold to Endeavor, to Ari Emanuel, to TKO. Endeavor needed his name to sell the deal. They let him believe he was back in power, gave him the title of executive chairman and the amount of money he asked for, but once the ink was dry, he was expendable. Now that he had sold, they didn't need him anymore. And here's where the timing gets suspicious. On January 23rd, The Rock joined the TKO board. 3 days later, Vince resigned. That doesn't look like a coincidence. That looks like a setup. The face of wrestling, clean, corporate, sponsor-friendly, stepping in at the exact moment Vince stepped out. And this time, the bell wasn't rung by Earl or any referee. It was rung by Ari. This wasn't a Montreal screwjob. It was corporate chess. For 40 years, Vince wrote the finishes. In the end, he lived the darkest one himself. So was Vince McMahon finally undone by justice? What do you think? Which theory makes the most sense? Corporate cleanup, family betrayal, or the sinister setup? Smash subscribe before Endeavor takes this video down.